I know what you must be thinking. What a horrible person. I know. I've thought it too. The fact I'm genuinely thinking about sending away my dog makes me feel pretty guilty. Then I remember what he's been doing, and my guilt is replaced with fear. This started about a month ago. I came home early from work one day, absolutely furious, and clutching a parting gift from my boss. My Christmas bonus was a ham or something. I sighed with a hand pressed firmly against my throbbing temple and placed the mystery meat in the fridge. The pounding behind my eyes got more and more intense until I leveled my fist and punched the fridge. The throbbing in my head didn't go away, but there was a new guest, as it was now accompanied by the pain in my knuckles. I let out a deep sigh that was childish. It was at that moment that Rufus came padding in, his big brown eyes gazing up at me, as if wondering what that noise had been. "Your dad was pretty dumb just now," I said, crouching down to run my hands across his thick fur. He wagged his tail and let out an excited noise as I petted him. I raised my eyebrows. I wish I could just curl up in a ball and chill like you do. Rufus, of course, paid no mind to this, and after realizing he wouldn't be receiving more pets, padded away back to his comfortable bed. I rolled my eyes and took a deep breath. While disappointing, this whole Christmas bonus thing wasn't the end of the world. Sure, my boss was an evil prick, but I had a whole 2 weeks of paid vacation stored up, and he couldn't stop me from using it. So, screw him. I'm gonna relax and spend my vacation doing whatever I want. How about it, Rufus? Wanna do nothing? I asked loudly. Rufus simply yawned. It was the next morning that I discovered that the mystery meat was still in my fridge. I peeled back the wrapped paper to see a red mass bundled in saran wrap. I furrowed my brow. Gotta be beef. Rufus sat at my side, eagerly waiting. I'm not a butcher. How would I know what it is? I'll just fry it? Everything tastes good fried with onions. I leaned down and booped Rufus's snoot. I bet you would taste good fried with onions too. He agreed as his tail wagged back and forth. Well, don't you have a high opinion of yourself? I cut off a large chunk of the mystery meat and threw it in a pan with onions, salt, pepper, and butter. I hope you taste good, Christmas bonus, because you don't really look that great. I probably talk to myself too much. Having a full conversation probably isn't healthy. I raised my eyebrow and decided to turn on the TV for my own sanity. It blinked on to a cooking channel. I glared at the TV. Don't you shame me. Then I flipped to the news and got right back to frying the beef. Thoughts and prayers go out to the victims and families of the late... I looked down at the large mass of beef left over. Hey, Rufus, I picked up a raw slab. Want something to chew on? He dashed on over like any dog would when presented with a hunk of meat. All right, you want it? Sit, I commanded with my most authoritative voice. Rufus gave no care, lunging upward and snagging it from my hand. Hey, I said, laughing. That was rude. Rufus took one last look at me before tearing into the beef with vigor. Still chuckling to myself, I once again turned back to the news. The search is still on for Maya Kelling, a local who was reported missing on December 14th by her boyfriend. She was in the Beluva area, and anyone with information is encouraged to call this number. I shut it off. The news is so depressing. Rufus paid me no mind, as he continued munching away with that playful ferocity of a domesticated animal. I took a deep breath and went to have a smell of the beef. It smelled god-awful. Jesus, what did I do to this thing? There was something deeply off-putting about that smell. It didn't smell rotten or decayed. It smelled foreign. It filled me with apprehension and a strange sense of dread. I shook my head and felt a wave of stupidity roll over me. The feeling was not too dissimilar when you were watching a scary YouTube video at night by yourself and you want to turn the lights on. I felt like a little bitch, but The feeling of nervousness and the fact that no one but me would judge me for throwing all this meat out made my decision easy. This was going straight into the garbage. I threw it in and did my utmost to forget about it. Take out it is. Having stuffed myself with pizza, I crashed hard. I'm a heavy sleeper, so it takes a lot to wake me up. Yet, I was woken up. A loud crash echoed through my bedroom as I shot bolt upright and listened for a moment. I heard dragging noises. My heart pounded in my chest. I stood, having armed myself with my pistol. I took a couple of careful steps forward. The noise became more distinguished. There was a gnawing and an eager snort. A sense of dread filled me as I rounded the corner, expecting the worst. "Rufus!" I shouted, seeing an absolutely devastating mess. He had torn open the trash, and it was scattered everywhere. I groaned and slumped my shoulders. "Not only did you scare the crap out of me, I'm also gonna have to clean up your friggin' mess. Come on, man." Rufus had pillaged what he was looking for and scampered off without even looking at me. Having fully cleaned up the mess, I stood up and stretched, cracking my back in a few places. "You're an ass for that," I said as I washed my hands. "I'm going back to bed. Good night. Love you," I trailed off. Rufus was sitting on his bed, gnawing on something. "Hey, what do you have there?" I walked forward and reached down. To my great surprise, it was the first time I was greeted by a low growl. "Hey now," I said, my words barely making it out of my throat because of the immediate surprise and fear. I took a few steps back and knelt down to get a good view of what he was gnawing on. The mystery meat. I reached forward tentatively and got met with the same low growl as before. "Rufus, come on, give me that. I think it's bad." But what Rufus did next sent a chill down my spine. He simply stopped gnawing on it and stared me dead in my eyes. No more movement, no tail wagging, nothing. I must have sat there for 30 seconds before I did anything. I stood up, forcing myself to turn around despite every single fiber of my being telling me not to take my eyes off of him. "Fine, have it your way." I couldn't help but take a peek over my shoulder as I walked away. He sat motionless, his eyes still locked onto mine. I turned on my light and closed my door, lying in bed until my eyes got too heavy to keep open. After waking up, it took a few seconds to recollect the night before. When I did, I fully opened my door to reveal Rufus curled up in a ball. He was curled up in his dog bed, fast asleep. I felt the weary tension within me wither away. "I need to get out of the house," I muttered. I came home that night to a dark abode. Having been drinking, my bearings were slightly askew, and I found myself fumbling with my keys a bit. As I pushed open the door to my house, I was greeted by an unfriendly darkness that settled itself over an empty house. I pawed for the light switch for a moment, until I found it, flipping it on with my one hand. "Crap!" I cried in fear, as my gaze was met by a great black mass standing in the middle of the living room. It wobbled slightly, as if unsure of its footing, before it fell to all fours. "Rufus?" I cried, my heart playing in my ribcage like a bongo. What the hell were you doing, you creepy-ass mutt?" Rufus just stared, tail stationary, eyes fixated on me. I'm gonna go relax." "Cut that out." Rufus didn't blink. Neither did I. I slammed my door closed and sat on the edge of my bed, taken aback. Jesus, that was friggin' scary. As I took off my shoes, the image of the shadows in the dark, form stretched in a way it wasn't supposed to, made my skin crawl. I've seen dogs standing up before, but in that goofy cute way. Hell, I've even seen dogs do a headstand. But this, standing in the middle of the room in the dark, just staring at the door, it unsettled me to my core. My sleep was troubled, as if I had a nightmare I couldn't quite remember. I woke up to that feeling of unease creeping its way back up my spine. To stall, I scrolled through the news, but nothing could take my mind off of it. Not Bitcoin plunging in value, not the disappearance of that local girl, not Taco Bell bringing back the nacho fries. I just kept imagining what Rufus must be doing at any given moment. Standing there. Just standing there. I growled and punched my pillow. I'm acting like a wuss. Gotta get up. I rolled out of bed and crept to my door, heart pounding. I stared at the handle and reached my hand out slowly, my heart beginning to thump against my chest at an increased tempo, with a deep breath that caught in my chest as I eased the door open. I felt fear jolt through my body as I saw him, standing once again in the middle of the living room, his furry back to me, as he stood absolutely motionless, staring at the wall. My words caught in my throat before I could speak. I did the worst possible thing I could have possibly done, and quietly closed the bedroom door. The fear began to set in worse. I locked my door and collapsed on my bed, breathing fast. He was out there, standing upright. I couldn't open that door again. I couldn't make it out of the house. Not with him there. Not with him just standing there. I found myself nauseous with terror that had possessed my body. I sat there staring at the door for the better part of an hour, before finally getting up the courage to once again check outside. I crept closer, each footfall on the soft carpet surely giving me away to the keen ears of Rufus. My heart pounded in near apoplectic terror as I once again laid my hands on the knob. It took me longer than I'd like to admit to open the door. Once it did, I peered through the crack to try and see where he might be. Still standing. Trying my best to summon fury, I opened the door wide and shouted, "Rufus!" All the anger I summoned was turned into terror vapors when Rufus slowly turned his head to face me. He turned his body next. He took a step. He took another one. And another. I screamed in horror as he began marching towards me, off kilter, one step at a time. I once more slammed the door and locked it, stumbling backwards in panic. I didn't hear a sound at my door, but I saw the shadow of something standing there. "Rufus, stop it right now!" It was met with silence again. I was met with a terrible sound. It sounded like when a dog yawns and their voice stretches and bends. But this had purpose. This wasn't just a noise. It was measured, meaningful. "Get out of my house!" I screamed in terror as it continued. "Get out now!" The sound stopped. The shadow at my door was slowly and clumsily plodding away. I shook, my breath coming in gasps. I stayed awake in my room for the rest of the day, until finally thirst gripped me and I couldn't bear it any longer. I left the room, armed with the small pistol I keep for safety. There he was, curled up in his dog bed, fast asleep. I kept my eyes locked on him as I tiptoed around, gathering food and water before dashing to my room. I type this now to you, asking the community of people who deal with these things. If I call the cops, they'll call animal control. They'll either laugh in my face or simply take Rufus. I don't want that. I want my Rufus back, my good boy. What's happening to him? Why is he like this? Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining me for tonight's story. If you think you might be able to handle just one more creepy tale, go ahead and click on one of the stories you can doubtlessly see appearing at the end of this one. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button too. Maybe hit that bell so you don't miss any of the spooky things that we do here. If, like so many of my patrons, you decide you'd like to get your spooky a little bit earlier, why not come on down to Patreon and have a look at some of the great tiers that I have. My $5 tiers get their spooky a little early, and they have their name read out at the end of every TikTok and every YouTube video that I make. If you'd like a copy of my latest book, there's a link below to my Amazon profile. I've got mini books. I'm sure you'll find one that'll suit you there. I always recommend Stragview Stories, as it's the one I'm the most proud of. It contains a large collection of prison horror stories out of Stragview, the prison that I've made in the Georgia hills. So, if you'd like to have a look, come on down. Before we go, let's go ahead and thank our patrons. Thanks to Janet for being our Spooky Skeleton tier contributor, and thanks to Winter, Xaronan, Emily Coltsfoot, Stephanie Carrington, Marianne Schuler, Tyler Parker, and Jennifer Damron for being my Ghostly Reader tier contributors. Thanks, everyone. We just couldn't do the show without you. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.